Now, I don't want to complain, but it's really scary being an entrepreneur. As a business owner, you're constantly worried that people are going to make fun of your products, even if one of those products is a book called Knitting with Dog Hair. It's a real book. I don't know if you guys can see the call out, but it says, "Stop vacuuming and start knitting." As a business owner, you're constantly worried that people are going to realize when you didn't think of everything, like the fact that the acronym to your business name spells ASS. It's a real hair salon. And many, like me, are worried that people are going to find out that you've made a mistake. I'm here to face one of my greatest challenges and admit that I lost $250,000 because I didn't understand a fundamental principle about how business products were made. And I'm not here just to get that off my chest. I'm here because I think that understanding my mistake can help save your job. Save it from robots, save it from downsizing, globalization, all kinds of things. Now I'm going to explain, but first we have to go back, way back, to my first big business idea. I was a car hop at Sonic, 14 years old, looked like I was a solid 10 years old, and very excited to embark on my new career in the service industry. So my first big idea was to wear rollerblades to work. I know, I was 14, okay? That was my first idea, okay? And nobody was wearing rollerblades to work, unlike what you've seen in the advertisements or the old-timey commercials. And this was going to be a win-win. I was going to make more money in tips because of the novelty, and my business was going to benefit because people would come from all over town. None of the other fast food chains had anyone on rollerblades. So it's a good situation. The only problem was that the owner of my Sonic said that under no uncertain terms was anyone allowed to wear rollerblades to work. Small problem. So after a number of these fruitless negotiations, one day I just showed up to work in a pair of rollerblades with nothing to change into. Yeah, I rollerbladed the 3 miles from my house to work, uphill, with no other change of shoes. The only thing I did bring with me was a legal release of liability that I had drafted, channeling my inner lawyer at 14, which I had presented to the only manager on duty. Now, picture a 17-year-old Napoleon Dynamite-looking character with real greasy hair who just stared at this document for like a minute and finally said, "Whatever, just do whatever you want." I was pretty proud of myself. Big success, right? Just up until the moment that I actually had to start working. So the way it works at Sonic is you pick up this tray of food and then you back up through these 2 really, really heavy-set doors. They're made to close real fast so that flies can't get in. So the problem was, because I had rollerblades on, I didn't have any traction to actually open the doors. I tried to go sideways, but I just couldn't get them open. A couple of times my coworkers helped out, but then they got quickly annoyed because they had their own stuff to do. So let's recap my big idea. My manager's really upset with me for putting him in this difficult position. My coworkers are upset with me for giving them extra work to do and holding up the line. And I am exhausted. After wearing rollerblades for 5 straight hours, I had to rollerblade home, 3 miles uphill, in the snow. Okay, now this is the audience participation portion of my talk. What do you think it feels like to have the world's dumbest business idea? What do you think it feels like in your body? What do you guys think? Sad? You're nauseous? You're embarrassed? Like you don't even want to go to work the next day? Yeah, that's what you think it feels like, but it actually feels just like the world's best business idea, right up until the moment that reality smacks you in the face and tells you otherwise. So this big point, this big difference of not understanding that your ideas could feel really amazing but actually be quite awful, I didn't understand that until I made a much, much bigger mistake. So let's fast forward to about 5 years ago. I'm this eager 29-year-old entrepreneur with a number of successes under my belt, enough to have $250,000 to invest. Pretty good. Now, did I put it away for a rainy day? No, entrepreneurs don't do that. Did I buy a fleet of Teslas for my company? Entrepreneurs do that, but I didn't. Did I hire a marching band to follow me around everywhere I went for a year? No, but that would have been an amazing way to start today's presentation. No, it's actually a really funny story. I took all that money and I invested it in a young startup called Facebook. And over the last 5 years, I've actually grown my money like 1,000 times. Yeah, that actually did not happen either. I wish. No, what I did was I used the money to build software for lawyers and their clients, legal software. And I would have been way better off not just investing in the Facebook stock, but hiring the marching band, because I lost all that money. It was another one of those ideas that felt really good at the time, but turned out to be a terrible business idea. And I didn't realize it until all the money had been spent. Now, legal software is kind of difficult to explain in a 10-minute talk, so I wanted to come up with an equally bad analogous product, so we just had something that we mutually understood was kind of like the product I created. So let's just assume for the sake of this talk that what I invented was the poo trap of legal software, okay? So yeah, I, Diana Kander, created the S&M looking, never have to pick up after your dog, but none of your friends or neighbors will make eye contact with you while your dog is wearing it, poo trap of legal software. Now, do I have to take it off the screen so you guys will listen? Okay. So the problem that I had made was I misunderstood invention for innovation. You see, here's the key difference. Invention is when you come up with a brand new idea, but nobody cares. It doesn't actually provide value for anybody. It could actually cause havoc for people. And innovation is where you come up with a new idea and it actually creates value for your intended audience. That's the key difference, whether or not your big idea is actually valuable for your customers. And the thing is, you can't decide. Only your customers can tell you. And while the poo trap of legal software was a novel idea and had never existed before, it provided about as much value as, well, the actual poo trap. It was a Frankenstein-level invention that the world didn't want. My customers didn't think that it was worth their time or money to use. And this difference between invention and innovation and whether or not what it is that you're doing is actually creating value, it doesn't just haunt entrepreneurs. It affects all of us in our jobs every single day. Let me explain. At work, we confuse doing stuff, doing our best at the tasks we've been assigned, that's invention, with actually creating value for the company where we work. That's innovation. So about 2 months ago, I conducted a study where I asked over 1,000 business owners and managers how many of their employees were irreplaceable. An irreplaceable employee is somebody who's so valuable that no matter what happens to the business, to the economy, they're the absolute last person you would ever want to let go. They're like the Chewbacca to your Han Solo, the Mr. Smithers to your Mr. Burns. Pretty important. And these managers, they talked about irreplaceable employees as people who created value outside their job description. They didn't actually talk about people who were incredible at their actual jobs. They talked about what they did above and beyond, how they constantly found new opportunities for the business, how they created efficiencies and solved problems that other people didn't notice. They talked about these employees as having this entrepreneurial mindset, like they saw their work as a product and their company as the customer. And they were constantly checking to see whether what they were creating was of value, whether they needed to adjust it. So think about that for a second. We all know the company you currently work for needs to change to stay relevant. They do. Well, the same is true for your job. In order to make it relevant on an ongoing basis, in order to become irreplaceable, we have to innovate our work and what it is that we do. My research shows that if you want to make this transition from being a liability on the payroll books to actually being an asset, then you need to transition your thinking from just showing up to work every day and going down your to-do list of what it is that you have to do, to actually thinking strategically about what you should be doing, right? You need to go from playing defense with your to-do list to playing offense on how to create value. So it's great to talk about it, but how do you actually do it? Well, I have a few suggestions. I think you should spend at least 15 minutes each week thinking about one of three things: innovating yourself, innovating your job, and innovating your company. Okay? Let me give you some examples. So if you're thinking about innovating yourself as a way to create more value for the company, why don't you make a list of 10 reasons you should be fired today? I know, we don't spend much time thinking about this topic, but think about it. That list is like a blueprint for how you could create new value for your company. Next, think about how to create new value by changing your job. Think about 10 ways you could change what you do at work every day to save yourself 5 hours per week. We've all got efficiencies, but we don't spend enough time thinking about them. And finally, think about how to create new value by innovating your company. Why don't you make a list of 10 different things your department could do to engage the employees, and then maybe offer to lead one of those initiatives? These are incredible ways to create value for your organization and become one of those irreplaceable employees. But the list I've given you is just 3 suggestions. The reality is there are hundreds of questions you can ask in each one of these categories. The trick is to turn it into a habit. The trick is to go from going down your to-do list every day to thinking about what you should be doing. Like, should you be going to all those meetings? No. Is this project the absolute best use of your time? Or is there something on your wish list that you think could create even more value to the organization? I've come a long way to deciding to wear rollerblades to work at Sonic and coming up with the poo trap of legal software. And it's all because I stopped inventing and started innovating. This focus on creating value has allowed me to not only get over my big failure, but write a New York Times bestseller, start and sell a company, and become an innovation consultant to Fortune 1000 companies. It's been an incredible journey, but it doesn't just have to be my story. I implore you to take off the metaphorical rollerblades and stop asking yourself, am I doing a good job? Am I working hard at the things they've asked me to do? And instead ask, am I creating value? Thank you.